The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the Makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the Makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you are listening to The Makers of Minnesota, where we talk to a podcast where we talk to cool people doing cool things. And I'm excited today to talk to Dan Oskey. He's got Tattersall Distilling. And how many years has it been? Has it been like 8?
No, it's been 3.5.
Oh, it has not.
Yeah, we opened to the public.
Oh, wow.
So it'll be 4 years for us from when we essentially incorporated, like right now. And then we opened to the public in July of 2015.
Okay, that is super weird. And I really feel like you're like Father Time and you've been doing this forever.
I mean, it feels like 8 years. I might look 8 years older. You know, that's possible.
mean, wow. Because, okay, so Tattersall Distilling, I think of you as like one of the founders of the craft distilling movement.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge compliment. There were about a dozen before us, other distilleries, and we're very close with all of them. There's a distillery guild, and so I would say now there's another probably dozen or so. It's about doubled since we started.
Okay, and do you feel like there's still room in the marketplace for more?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's trickier now. You have to be making something perhaps more unique. I think that if you're making just vodka and gin, it's going to be really, really tough. I mean, it's going to be tough to get your products in stores because there's so many vodkas out there right now, and gin too. And so I think, a lot of people, the goal is to lay down barrels and make whiskey, but you have to pay the bills. And so, to do that, a lot of times it's the quicker turnaround products are going to be vodka and gin and some of the more clear spirits and liqueurs.
And then some of the brown spirits come later, some of the more specialty liqueurs, that sort of thing. Yeah,
I mean, essentially it took us 3 years to launch our first brown spirit, which was earlier this year. And then
I had an opportunity to go and look in the barrel, the cask. Is it
the barrel room? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was very exciting.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we laid down about 350 barrels this year in 2018 as we kind of come to a close on 2018. So we've definitely ramped up production. We'll continue to do so. We actually just we doubled the size of our mash cooker in 2017, but I guess John, my business partner, is smart enough to keep the old mash cooker around and not sell it. So we just hooked that up about 2 weeks ago. So now we're making a lot more whiskey.
Let's go back to the beginning of time. So I came across you. You were like a bartender extraordinaire.
Yeah, I was a bartender.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of been the one constant in my life since college. I've been bartending since college. I took about a 1.5 year hiatus, and then I moved back to Minnesota in the kind of mid-2000s, and I started bartending again in 2005 in Minneapolis.
And when I met you, I think you were at the strip club. Is that right?
Yeah, strip club Meat and Fish. I was there for 7 years.
And you'd made bitters.
Yeah, we did. When we opened up the strip club, kind of to match what J.D. Frotsky was doing in the kitchen, because J.D. was this farm to table movement, which a lot of times people, that was 2008, January 15th of 2008. But Omnivore's Dilemma had kind of just come out.
Yeah, Michael Pollan's book about eating farm to table and
right, and that whole farm to table movement was actually, even though you see it all over now, it was very new then. And so JD, everything made from scratch in the kitchen. We wanted to do the same thing with the bar, and so we had to learn how to make bitters and homemade tonics, and we were bottle fermenting ginger beers, and basically everything behind the bar was made from scratch, and a lot of just kind of recipe development. For me then in 2010 it was, some gentleman hit me up and we created Joya Soda.
Yes.
And then it was a couple of years later that I had created this bitters kit that was being sold in one liquor store right around the Christmas time of 2012, and it was it looked like it was in a basket with like the bird's nest like filling, and and we covered it with like cellophane, and what you got out of it was cool, but the packaging was not great, and we kind of dissolved it after the holidays. And then Eric Eastman hit me up in a couple months later, and he'd bought a couple of kits. He wanted to make some more, and so he and I created the Easy kind of basically brew kit for making your own bitters, and that still exists. I'm no longer part of that, so it's Easy and Company now. And Joya Soda, we actually sold that earlier this year too.
Yep. And then, so what made you how did you and John connect? Because you guys have a lot of yin and yang that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, I've known John since I was 7.
Okay.
I've known John since 2nd grade. He was the new kid in school.
Is it Kreidler? Is that how you say his last name? Okay.
Yeah. So John and I grew up together, and we've been friends basically, over 30 years at this point. And he was in banking, and I was in the industry, and he and I sat down. I had just left the strip club, and I was going to go help Burke and Christina open up Ola Repa in South Minneapolis.
Yep.
And John hit me up basically a couple days before we opened. It was like, hey, got time for a beer? And we grabbed a beer across the street, and he kind of asked me what I knew about the distilling industry. I thought I was just kind of be giving him some advice and, maybe some products he should think about making. And then he was like, well, do you want to be my business partner? And didn't even hesitate. I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. And
yeah.
So,
and at that point, you'd already done a couple businesses, right?
Yeah. And and John's an insanely brilliant business mind. And I would have been stupid to say no. But it's also the kind of fact that you grew up with somebody, and he and I can basically have a conversation without really saying anything.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. You communicate in such a cool way. And he and I definitely, we have our totally different strengths. And so, some things are clearly John questions, and some things are clearly Dan questions. And so it is like that perfect yin and yang.
So when you sat down, did you decide like, okay, we're 50-50 and we're each going to put in this amount of money, and how much money did you each start out with?
Yeah, so John, I'll be totally honest, John put down more money than me.
A lot of times that is the way it goes.
We are 50-50. We then decided to raise a lot of the money. Him being a banker, we raised a lot of the money, most of it through banks.
Tell me about that. You just went and got small business loans?
Yeah, a few different loans. Sometimes we would go into the bank, and I would just be like, John, you cannot talk to these. You can't talk to them this way. And, it was funny because, he'd already written a business plan basically at our first meeting. He had already a business plan, 5-year projections, everything written out. And so when we sat down in the banks, he was just a very hard negotiator. We ended up getting a great loan from Pioneer Bank out of Mankato. That was the biggest loan, and then we got an SBA.
Yep.
And then we did also raise some private capital too.
Did you have to I'm assuming you had a house. I don't know. Did you have to put up collateral?
Yeah, we had to put up. Everything.
Yeah, that's It's so ironic though if you think about it. Okay, so we as a small business people wrote the business plan. We had our projections, and you really spent all this time making this solid case, right, to these bankers. And then they look at you and they're like, well, yeah, okay, and we'll take your house as collateral and these other things as collateral. And it's like, well, if I wanted to sign away my house to you, I wouldn't have needed to come here. I could have gotten a home equity loan. It's it's crazy.
I think with distilling and brewing, at least at that time, the equipment being that it doesn't depreciate very much. They're like, okay, the equipment is kind of the big piece of this pie. And so that was a big thing. And then we also, the laws it was a tricky time because, we started talking in, it was the first time we talked about it was April of 2014.
Yeah.
And he and I basically would meet, once, twice, even 3 times a week to, work on business plan and figure out basically the direction we want to go, what products do we make. And then we were watching legislation. Legislation was changing too. And what happened in September of that year is the law changed saying that you could have a cocktail room in your
Right.
distillery. At that point, we kind of we were hoping it would go that way. You don't know it's going to go that way.
Sure.
But at that point, we more or less kind of took a quick U-turn and just kind of rewrote the business plan a little bit, and then also like the space had to change essentially. I mean, we were originally looking at a 5,000 square foot space. You know, we were just going to be a production space with
Right.
maybe, you know, a little tasting area. And then the game changed completely, allowing us to have a bar in there. And, you know, having my background and then my connections, and, you know, the bartenders that a lot of them still work with us now, it was just kind of, it was a no-brainer that, yeah, the bar is going to be the centerpiece of this distillery.
So let's talk about that then. So now you're going to distill, you're going to do vodka and gin because that's what everybody does because that's the way you get started. You're going to have this cocktail room. What I think is really interesting is how did you get all of that and then take it to retail? Because you can make great liquor and you can run a fun cocktail room, but now you have to get it out into stores.
Yeah, I mean, the low hanging fruit right away were the connections I had with, you know, retail. Having sold, you know, the bitters kits and developing some relationships there,
And that probably made a huge difference for you.
absolutely. I mean, there were 3 or 4 that basically like right away were like, sign me up.
Yep.
You know? And then, you know, by week 2, I mean, originally, we knew what we were getting into, but at the same time, it was like, you know, you think that there's more hours in the day. And so John and I are like, you know, Dan's going to distill and then bartend at night and do some sales here and there. And like, it was like, you know, that didn't really happen. I basically became, you know, a sales guy almost right away. Within, you know, week 2 of our distributor having product, he and I were just pounding pavement and, you know, getting doors slammed in our faces.
Yep. Because at that point, were the stores carrying a lot of local distilled products?
Some of them were, you know, and sometimes the answer would occasionally be like, yeah, but local doesn't sell, and which at that time it was kind of cusping, and you could feel that it was changing a little bit.
Yeah.
There was certainly a good number of liquor stores that had really embraced the craft and local like spirits movement, seeing that maybe it would mirror the beer industry a little bit.
Yep.
Because we all know how the beer industry ended up.
Boom.
You know, it exploded. I think it took a little bit more time, and that probably has to do with the fact that there's a little bit more education with spirits because, you know, we know what vodka is, we know what whiskey is, but, you know, what the heck is aquavit?
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys want to release these, you know, Italian-inspired bitter liqueurs like these different Amari and Fernet, things like that. So there is a more of an educational component. And so, I mean, originally we had 3 products, and John and I were honestly just walking around with roller bags of booze and just kind of cold calling liquor stores.
Yep.
And yeah, that's how you start.
When you look at the business and like what you did in the beginning, like what is your day like now? And I mean, aren't you like in tons of states and all these stores and
Yeah, we're in 22 states. So my day now, it's, you know, the past 6 weeks I've been home a lot because the kind of end of the year you don't really do a lot of like out of state market work.
Yep.
You know, the October, November, December, everybody's just kind of ramping up for the holidays. They don't really want you in market.
Yep.
Too much. Although we did travel all the way through the week before Thanksgiving. But you know, like today was basically kind of looking through our sales numbers and how we can kind of reconfigure what we do, what's working, what's not. So, I mean, there's been a lot of meetings for the past few weeks. I mean, I spent an hour today fixing furniture and then, a little time kind of hanging out with the distillery crew, talking about some new products or, you know, potential new products, I should say, because we oftentimes create things that we don't ever release. We'll kind of do like a little test run.
Yep.
So a lot of it's just kind of setting goals, figuring out how we're going to achieve those goals. I like to think that we've gotten a lot smarter, you know.
Give me an example of that, and I can think of one, just that tour you gave me of the bottling line.
Right. I mean, okay, and that actually is a good one. So, like, you know, bottling line, I remember the first time we bottled, we had our bartenders and servers were bottling with us.
Yep.
And it took couple hours to put together one pallet. And like, this is great. And then, a couple days later, you see it go onto a truck, and we're all high-fiving each other. And we're like, this is awesome. But what happens is, how are you going to keep up? And do your servers and bartenders, once it starts getting busier and busier, do they actually want to come in and bottle by hand? At that point, everything was done completely by hand.
Yep.
We're hand putting, stickers on the bottles, and so that was actually, that was kind of what we saw right around late 2016, as that was going to slow us down moving into 2017. At which point we looked into automating the bottle line. So part of it is still hands-on, but it goes a lot faster now.
Yeah.
And we do have a crew that is what they do. They, a couple of them work in the front of the house too, but Tuesdays and Wednesdays they bottle for about 6 hours a day.
And you get to be a specialist with the equipment and the machines, and you understand their temperaments and
exactly. I mean,
because it's a skill, it's manufacturing, just like anything else.
Yeah, it's a skill, and it's also like, if we're bottling gin, that's gonna be totally different than if we're bottling our sour cherry liqueur, which is gonna be a little bit heavier by weight. And so you have to reconfigure the machine when you switch it over. So, we've gotten smarter about a lot of what we're doing, and I guess efficient. And
do you think you know how to do everything? Like, one of the things in my business that was hard for me to grasp was that I didn't need to know how to make the fries necessarily, but I always felt like I did.
Yeah, I don't even know how to turn the bottling line on.
Okay.
I know that there's a green button. I assume that does it, but I've never used the bottling line. That was, that got delivered in 2017, and I was essentially on the road in other states, living in hotels all year. And so you find the things that you're really good at, you focus on it, you can pretend like you know everything, but really you just have really wonderful people around you that do know how to do those things.
So are there products that you've made that you stopped carrying because they just didn't sell?
No, there was one. Just one? Just one.
What was it?
It was I'm embarrassed to say that we did a white whiskey, a corn whiskey, right when we opened, but we did that just for the cocktail room. We never sold it on store shelves. There was nothing we ever took off the market. We did, again, kind of getting on, like, we got smarter. We stopped bottling like our creme de fleur, which is one of our more popular liqueurs. We originally had that in a 375 milliliter bottle, so like a little half bottle.
Yeah.
And now it's in a big bottle. And so we kind of realized that you're getting more bang for your buck, and people wanted more of it. At first, we were like, yeah, you're only going to use a little bit in a cocktail, so why would you want a big bottle of it?
Right.
Same thing with our absinthe this year. We essentially stopped making the little bottles of that and then put it all in 750s, and it's very aggressively priced, and that was a really very purposeful endeavor there, because really I was like, absinthe is never going to become like our number one selling product.
Right,
so
right.
Take a little bit of a loss on it.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you think when you're moving forward and thinking about growth, like you've moved into 22 states, are there trends that like you think like, oh, are we to the point where we're saturated yet and we're going to see some distilleries maybe go out, or?
Well, we have. I mean, that's the sad thing. We saw, we've seen a couple smaller ones in Minnesota. I think the first one closed in 2016. They were over in South Minneapolis. But you are seeing some of the original players in the craft market. A lot of people don't know this, but Death's Door actually is now no more. So
I love that gin.
Yeah, and so they filed bankruptcy about a month ago or so.
Sad.
It's very sad.
I'm going to stock up.
Yeah.
I do like their gin.
It'll be worth something someday.
All right, trends for cocktailing, trends for the industry, things that you're like, oh, we have to make that. Amaro seems like it's all over everything.
Yeah, it is. It's not like for us. I mean, we love it, and it depends on the market. I think we just got back from a Kentucky launch, and it was very popular. It wasn't a place that we couldn't sell it into. It kind of depends on the market. What they're drinking in Sioux Falls, South Dakota is going to be different than what they're drinking in Atlanta, Georgia. And so
for sure.
I don't know if there's any, like, the more we go out, I don't think there's any ubiquitous trends. I just don't. And maybe that's because I'm becoming old and jaded, but I think there are, I think that there's probably the newest trend, the one that I love it in terms of like actual cocktailing, are these just people making really simple 3-ingredient cocktails that are just perfectly portioned.
Yep.
And I saw that a lot in Kentucky, and that was really, really fun to see because it was almost like this wow moment for me where I'm like, why didn't I make that drink better? When I made it.
And do you see like, I know Crooked Water Spirits has been a guest on the program, and they did a bottled old fashioned. Do you
Right.
think like those kind of cocktails bottled?
Yeah, definitely seen a lot more of the RTD, the ready to drink
premix.
Yeah, in that it makes perfect sense, honestly, because if you have people over, for example, it's easy to crack open a beer, pour a bottle of wine, but if you want an old fashioned, you want to take 5 minutes for every time you have to make an old fashioned or a batch of old fashions, and so it's like the ready to drink thing it's really cool for the home user especially, and honestly, I look at like if you're on an airplane, that would be incredible too.
She has it in like the Laura Hotel, like a little probably 2-portion bottle. Is that 350 milliliters?
Yeah, and you get back to your room and you're like,
yep.
I don't want to go out. I'm too tired. I just maybe you just flew in or something. But you
little
do
something.
Wanna, you do want a little drink before you go to bed. It's kind of perfect.
That's the deadly drink for me.
An old fashioned.
The drink before I go to bed.
Oh yeah.
When I go to bed with a drink, I know like that was a bad decision, and I do it often. It's not like it never happens. It happens a lot.
You fall asleep really quickly. I don't know that you sleep that well.
No. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, it was the last one, and there's the rest of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of our job to a point where I'm out quite a bit. Last night, I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, wow, we didn't drink tonight. I was like,
that's great.
It's been a while.
We're coming up on dry January, so there's that.
Yeah, we don't do that in this industry.
We don't do that. All right, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much
Dan,
for having me.
Thanks for telling me the story of Tattersall, and I wish you and John continued success. I cannot believe it's only been 3 years, 3.5. Feels like 8.
I know.
And I hope in 5 more years we're sitting here recapping, and you're in all 50 states.
I love it.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Wrap me in bacon, wrap him in bacon, and pour bacon crumbles on my head. Pour bacon crumbles on his head. Now that I think of it, I'll just go to Little Caesars. So go to Little Caesars. Get a bacon wrap deep dish pizza instead. Get a bacon wrap deep dish pizza instead.
Get Little Caesars large, hot and ready bacon wrap deep dish pepperoni and bacon pizza wrapped in over 3.5 feet of bacon for just $12 at participating locations plus tax.
Pizza.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. An F-16 pilot having hydraulic problems with his aircraft managed to parachute to safety as the plane smashed into a warehouse east of Los Angeles. Fire Captain Fernando Herrera.
That pilot landed in the March Air Force Base area, in the base itself.
Amazingly, there were no serious injuries after the plane hit the building. Alabama executed a man last night for his role in killing 4 people after an argument over a pickup truck. Tennessee executed a man who killed his wife. Reporters couldn't see the execution, but AP correspondent Travis Lawler says
we could hear sounds, including a singing, that Mr. Johnson's attorney says was him singing a hymn.
Answering a reporter's question, President Trump said he hopes the U.S. is not on a path to war with Iran. Mr. Trump has dismissed suggestions that any of his advisors are trying to push him into a conflict. I'm Rita Foley.